we started a Discord server last year, right? I have 2 college age kids and they've been after me for years. So I'm like, well, Dad, why don't you have a Discord? It's like, why are you doing everything by email and this and that? I'm like,
Still sending faxes.
Right. I mean, I think I have like a carrier pigeon around here somewhere in the back.
Nice.
So,
Welcome back. We are joined by Mike Buetow, the president of PCEA, which is the Printed Circuit Engineering Association. And a quick interesting fact about Mike is that he spent 6 years as the communication directors of the now Global Electronics Agency. Mike, thanks for your time. We know you're a busy guy, especially this time of year, and welcome.
thank you. It's great to be here. I'm not just saying that.
Mike, Daniel is always asking about, and I can't stand when he asks this question. I don't know why it just bugs me when he does. But he's always like, he thinks it's like some type of icebreaker or something like that. But I don't need that with you. But he always asks for the worst trade show story that you've experienced, right? Or something like that. Or what's the most dramatic thing that happened at a trade show? And then it always falls flat, I feel like, everybody's response. But I do have one that I wouldn't say the worst. I would say like the most hilarious one that I experienced. This was, do you remember the year that PCB West was in Arizona?
So that was that PCB West or was that the HDI show?
I think it was PCB West.
Okay, go on.
And I mean, this was like early 2000s. And there was a competitor of mine that their marketing all said PCB takeout, right? And it was a Chinese takeout box. Like, order your PCBs, like it's as quick as getting takeout, right? And at the time we were like an American fab shop, right? So I went full on, and I can actually show it today. My dad's gonna love this part. We're showing our logo, Dad. You see it? I went full on American.
He's been waiting
Eagle.
3 seasons for that.
Yeah. And I bought the back ad of the full page ad of the book that everybody gets when they go to the conference. I don't know if you guys still do that, but back then you
do.
You had like a conference page, right? And I bought the back ad, and on it I like painstakingly in like MS Paint drew this eagle carrying a Chinese takeout, right? And said like, tired of Chinese takeout yet, right? Like, buy American, and we're like that, right? And so the competitor that that was their claim to fame, their slogan, one-upped us though. He ordered like $200 to $300 worth of Chinese food and had it delivered to our booth at the same day. So like we just had all these Chinese takeout boxes at our thing. It was hilarious. And but it kind of leads me into like wondering, because when I started, it was just PCB West, right? And then expanded PCB East. And last year I got to attend to the first ever PCB Detroit. And I've looked online, and you have like you guys are going with a lot of universities with the PCEA, with the PCB design aspect of it too. When did that transition from, because it was like Circuits Assembly, right? Do I have the magazine name correct?
Yeah, that's one of them. Sure.
Yeah, and there was the other one was Printed
Circuit Design and Fab.
Yeah, Printed Circuit Design and Fab. PCDNF. Wow, I haven't heard that acronym in a while. And and then now look at it today. It's this, way bigger venue, and now it's online courses and in-person courses. And
when did that you're going to get a chance to talk, Mike?
No, this is it. When did that transition to this, what it is today?
Right. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? And I'm mostly just interested in, how was the Chinese food? Was it any good?
I didn't eat it. So
you didn't eat it?
No.
All right. Okay. Kind of makes me hungry. So I think the question you're asking is, how did you sort of evolve from being identified with a magazine and a trade show to being all these other things. Is that a fair?
That's a better question.
If you just translated Kincaid, that I would say that would be.
If you wanted to ask a succinct, answerable question, yeah, that's fair.
Literally, I was about to ask the question and Daniel interrupted.
Only 5 minutes in. I'm sorry for not being patient.
That's from, you got to count the intro.
So I think it was 40 years of doing a couple of things and then recognizing that we needed to do a lot more. The magazines going back to the 1980s were really the main way that people found out what was going on in the industry. I mean, we go back to when, the original printed circuit design and fab, which was an old PC fab, was a pamphlet that was sold out of the back of a board shop in Atlanta. And then, the guy just used it to market his, his services and to, get rid of used equipment. And then somebody, from one of the laminate companies came along and said, hey, could I put an ad in that thing? And, light bulb went off and all of a sudden the industry had a trade magazine, and then it had many, many trade magazines. And then Google came around and it had a lot fewer trade magazines. And, those of us in that industry where we were basically selling advertising realized that, we could go down with that ship or we had to adapt. And so you start looking at what you think that your customers need, and you start looking at what you think you can actually deliver to them. And, we'd already developed the trade show. That came around in the 1990s. But the way that people travel these days and the way that the industry is configured, not everybody stops and goes to everything during the trade show week, right? So, if you think back to, when I was at IPC, we had, Printed Circuit Expo, and then we started Apex. And, that first year of Apex, we had 10,000 people. It was insane. So, and then, .com explosion, everything bust. You ended up with a lot fewer people in North America. The folks who are offshore don't necessarily need to come to North America to look for equipment and materials because, lo and behold, a lot of it is being designed and manufactured now in Asia. A lot of it was already being designed and manufactured in Europe, of course, especially on the soldering side. So again, you have this sort of reconfiguration of where the population is. And at the same time, then travel budgets go away. So, all the bench kind of disappeared. You guys are on the younger side. I'm 58, right? So I've been in the industry since 91. But, if you go back to 2000 and, we had sort of this peak market, US was over 10 billion in bare boards alone, 30% of the international market. Companies had tons and tons of employees. And then after it all went away, you lost pretty much all those guys that were between the ages of, 18 and 21, maybe on the low end to, 30, 35. They just kind of all disappeared. Either they were laid off because they were the low man on the totem pole, or they said, you know what, the heck with this. I'm going to go find a job in another little, maybe more stable industry. And we didn't really see the industry start coming back until, 10 years ago. Now you can kind of look around and you see plenty of younger guys in the industry. There's a lot more people under 35 now than there were since any time before 2001. But if you remember your stats class and, you think of that binomial distribution, right? The two bumps, that's kind of what it is, with a bunch of people over 55, or maybe over 60 now. And then, a bunch of people that are, maybe under 35 and not much in between. So, the folks who are older still read stuff, print, but, there's not enough of them to go around, and there's nobody that wants to advertise in that. Everybody else has sort of come of age in the Google era. And so information is much easier to come by in some senses. However, with that flood of information, there's no filter. And so now you need to rely on people that are known entities, subject matter experts, to filter out all the nonsense, all the noise. And that's why the shows have kind of grown up. People aren't traveling as much, so you have to go to them. which means PCB West already existed. Let's start PCB East. Okay. Now we've got this pocket in the Midwest where, we're not getting as many people from. Let's do something in Detroit, see how that does. And we'll see where this all goes. But I think we've kind of learned that it's a lot easier to go to the market than to expect them to come to you, especially if they're the only guy on the line or the only guy in the design room. There's nobody else to back them up. So if they leave, all the work just gets piled up behind them. Long answer to your question.
That's really interesting what you just said there, because quite literally everyone has a microphone these days, right? I mean, so the that's an interesting point in terms of having recognized authority within our space in the age of everyone kind of having a voice, right? But that was a interesting tale. Thanks for taking us through kind of the progression of that. But you're not done yet, right? And I think that kind of ties into my question. This year at PCB East, there's going to be an assembly track for the first time, right? So this is kind of a new avenue for the organization. We
Represent.
we talked to a lot of folks about kind of the disconnect between the assembly side and upstream design side. Not oftentimes, or not all the time, do those two sides really care what the other thinks, to put it bluntly. Do you think that this could go, or make inroads into kind of getting those people into the same space at the same time, and maybe foster some more collaboration between, the conceptual side of what we do and the reality side of it being assembly?
Well, the short answer is yes, but I don't know that I'm going to. If the rest of the question is this going to then be sort of this big all-inclusive event where everybody in the industry goes to? I mean, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that. What I like to do is try to slay our dragons one at a time.
They don't know Daniel's speaking, I think, right? So once they find that out, literally everyone's going to come.
Well,
that's the plan.
So if I'm gonna do a plug here, I guess it would be, Elias is speaking on stencil, fab and design. We've got Daniel speaking twice, right, on placement. Sean.
Yep.
I can't make it, brother. I can't make it. I can't make it. If I could be there, I would. Trust me, in a heartbeat.
Yeah, but to your point, Daniel, I do think that one of the things that the PCA wants to do is take design concepts, especially new ones, and kind of push them down to fabrication and to assembly, and while at the same time getting that better understanding of what the constraints are on the fab and assembly side, because we design by constraint, we build by constraint. There's nothing that we couldn't design hypothetically, but once you get to that first article, if it's not buildable and functional, or more importantly, if it's not functional, then you've just wasted a lot of time and resources. I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's like yesterday I had this lady reach out to me about DFM for PCB fab, and I tried to explain to her, well, I mean, it's really contingent upon your fab shop, right? Like what capabilities do they have? But I kind of wanted to scream and be like, the more important part is the assembly part now that I'm on this side, right? Because, okay, I can make a trace this small. Okay, I can make your inners and do this for this hole. But how is that going to affect selective solder? How's it going to affect reflow? How's it going to affect assembly, right? Like I look at it completely different now, seeing the whole picture,
Right. So once something goes through the machine, is everything going to flip up because, you had it, the smaller components right by a bigger one, and, you're pulling things away. I mean, there's
Imbalance.
a lot of issues there. And, it's still true that most designers have never walked a fab shop and they've never walked through an assembly shop. So they haven't really seen how these machines work, don't have a really great handle on what the impact, it's one thing to see the machine. It's another thing to actually understand what it's doing. And they haven't had that opportunity, I think, to have those long, critical conversations with the engineers on the manufacturing and assembly side.
Or sometimes they're just like really mean, like Alex Norman. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he designs batteries. Yeah, and he said he straight up doesn't care about us on the assembly side, you know, like just tough, you know, deal with it. Like I'm going to put what I put there and just, you know, figure it out, you know? So I think it's good to try to bring the sides together. We need some more harmony.
I think that there's a lot of ways to get there, but you know, first and foremost, people have to know who it is that they can talk to on the other side, and I think in a lot of cases, folks are kind of siloed intentionally. You know, we started a Discord server last year, right? You know, I have 2 college-age kids, and they've been after me for years. They're like, "Well, Dad, why don't you have a Discord? Like, why are you doing everything by email and this and that?" I'm like,
still sending faxes.
Right? I mean, I think I have like a carrier pigeon around here somewhere. So we did that. And I mean, actually today there was a bunch of conversations on DFM, and, you know, you've got designers there asking questions and some fabricators on there explaining this is why you do that. And this one really kind of got me. Somebody said, well, hey, how come I can't just send all my DFMs over to you to quote or to check before you even send me back a quote? One of the fabricators is like, look, you know, like, because we'd spend all our time, you know, doing that work, and most of the time
free
we won't
analysis for everyone.
Exactly. So, but that's the thing, right? I mean, it gets to the heart of the issue, which is that folks just don't know. Okay. And I like the fact that at least now there are some opportunities for them to ask these questions.
Yeah, we attended all of us actually last year at STAR got to attend a Dale Lee talk where he really highlighted how just because you can design something doesn't mean you can build it. And there was a number of examples he provided of different packages that I'm sure, you know, on paper, the performance it offers and everything is fantastic, but to try to actually build it, like Sean was saying before, to figure out how to actually get it functioning is a whole nother matter.
Yeah, Dale's a stud, right? And you know, how many times have people come on your show and said that? Dale's an absolute stud, and I love how he puts it. He's like, it's not designed for assembly, it's assembly by design. And he gets it right.
Yeah, that was a fantastic presentation. Really enjoyed seeing it. Yeah, and everything works on the screen, right? I think that's the problem. even in the stencil world, like you know, I've done some stuff that looks fantastic on the screen, and it gets into production, and they're like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I don't know, work on the screen." You know?
The CAD looked great.
Well, one of the things that I like about the way the PCB East is shaping up this year is that we have, for the first time, a bunch of component guys. So AMD, Microchip, Lattice, Altera, right? So you got Intel. So you've got the guys on the absolute front end, and then you have, you know, your traditional, you know, group of ECAD folks and fabricators, some assemblers. You know, there's at least like 4 or 5 contract assemblers there, and then we have some of the assembly equipment guys too. So Parmy, you know, Indium, you know, solder paste, separation technologists. I mean, I think I first met John Russo from Separation Technologists back when I entered the industry, you know, like maybe it's the first show I went to, NEPCON in 1992. I think John retired. I think they got bought by Resentech a couple of years ago, but be that as it may, I mean, so you've got folks on the cleaning side, on the inspection side, and you know, designers are going to get to actually see what some of these things look like. The cleaning side is really interesting to me because we do have a couple of talks from Bill Capon and from Doug Pauls that are going to take place. And, you know, the designers don't think in terms of cleaning, right? But you have all these QFNs and these, you know, these parts where there's really
standoff.
Yeah. Right. And, you know, how are you going to clean under it? And, you know, residue gets under there, and you guys know this, right? I mean, no clean, you know, still has something at least something on the board, right? You can't necessarily always just say, oh, it's good, you know, and send it out into the wild. So,
and sometimes you can get the chemistry under it, but not effectively get it flushed out too. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be able to both get it in and out to make it work okay, right?
Yep.
That's what she said.
That's the interesting part, though. Everybody from their own, I guess, corner of the industry. You hear, you know, design for assembly because the assembly guys want it to be able to assemble nice. And then the cleaning guys are like, well, no, we need design for cleaning, right? So you've got all these conflicting interests, and somehow we need to find a way for them to work all together. But that'll be cool that there's component people there I would suggest that if you're going to have assembly guys in the same space as component guys, the component guys should probably have some private security. I know these guys have seen some packages that they'd like to rough somebody up over, so just something to think about.
Yeah, it's insane, right? I was at Productronica in November, and everybody's playing catch up. All the equipment guys are playing catch up. Whether it's parts that are ultra microscopic, or whether it's really the huge,
or the opposite,
PCBs.
right?
Yeah.
It's going in both
500
extremes.
500 grams and above, and they're not just heavy; they're really big. So yeah. But that kind of ties things back, right? Because what you're getting at really is the trade-offs, and that's why a lot of the folks who are pitching, come, 12 hours I can teach you everything you need to know about printed circuit design, and I'm like, wow, okay. Well, if it's that easy, then I'm yanking both my kids out of college right now and sending them to your class, right? Because they're advertising. Google pays its circuit board designers more than it pays its hardware engineers. AMD's hiring for over $300K in Austin for circuit board, just layout guys, right? I mean, it's insane the amount of money that's available now, and this because there's just not enough of them. And 12 hours in an online class, that was created by one guy in a closet, just probably isn't going to get you there. But the trade-offs are what's important, and that's the issue, right? What do I do, not just about my place and route, but how do I handle all these different types of soldering processes? How do I design for cleaning if in fact it's going to get clean? Can I design it to be tested? Am I leaving enough space? Where are my test points? And that's why the whole PCA training program came about, because there was this big gap in what the industry, the knowledge set that was available. I was at IPC back when we developed the CID program, which is a Certified Interconnect Designer. And at that time, when we created that program, we had met with this outside consulting firm that specialized in test development. And one of the first things they told us was, build it to the standard, because the standard is defensible, it's consensus and all that. So we wrote everything to the standard, which is back then was a D275. Now it's a 2221, the 2222, and so on. And it really hasn't changed much since then. If you want to understand the standard, that class is great. But if, we had already scrapped all the tutorial information out of the spec. So, understanding the trade-offs really wasn't going to work. And I mean, the D2221 just got updated a couple of years ago. It was the first time in 13 years, which meant everything, you can't update the certification program if the standard didn't change, as long as the standard is tied to the certification program. So the things get out of date. And what we wanted to do is take a different tack and say, hey, look, design is about producibility and solvability and manufacturing and functionality, and you have to understand what all the trade-offs are that go into that, and then make the best decision for that particular design, for that particular product, really. That's a much more complicated way to go about it, but that's, if you want to develop a good designer, that's what you have to do. So that's where the PCA training program came from. And, we have that 40-hour curriculum. We've licensed it to some colleges in the U.S. We've licensed it to some trade associations. We're teaching it on site at Wayne State University, which is one reason why we go to Detroit for the PCB Detroit show.
Was that for me?
It was in part for you. You're a more effective lobbyist than you realize, I think.
Well, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C., actually, the 25th of March for a documentary coming out about how what happened to like my company, when we were running boards forever. And then like you said earlier, you got to adapt. There was no money left in it, so we pivoted to assembly, right?
Yep.
But that's what I liked about your Wayne State class in particular. You reached out. I do remember this. I don't remember which kid was being born, but I remember I was having a kid the day I was supposed to speak at Wayne State that day, because It wasn't. That's what I liked. It was very interesting. Okay, there's the course, and that's great and everything. But you actually brought in Yash from Saturn Electronics, right, to talk about, when you're doing your PCB design, think about this part of the circuit board fab, and then you're gonna have, me talk about like the assembly side and maybe some of the board side too, right? But like you're not just siloing these guys and this is how you use Altium, right? Like it's actually, look, after you design this, like Elise is saying, from the screen to real life, this is what's, some things to look out for. It was more interactive, and then the students can ask questions and get, listen to a person. I mean, Yash been doing this for what? Probably almost 20, 25, 30 years at least, right? So it's who better to learn from than people who actually manufactured it their whole life.
So, Yash and I were kind of going back and forth because, he's a Michigan grad and, I'm always being accused of pimping for Illinois. But his brother went to Michigan State. And so we both agreed that was pretty much the worst thing ever.
Found a mutual enemy, huh?
One of my friends last night was trying to say Michigan and Michigan State are comparable colleges, and I'm like, "What are you?" So I pulled up the stats, right? And it was like 11 national titles to 6, and we're going on. He's like, "Yeah, but look at our like canoeing. We're really good at that, and our
amazing curling team."
Yeah, I was like, "What?" Sure, I'm like, "Okay, you can have that if you want. I'm okay with that." But yeah, too funny.
Mike, you mentioned not being able to learn everything there is about PCB design in 12 hours. And I'd say that one of the biggest, I'd agree with that for one of the reasons. I hate bringing up Alex twice in one episode, but he mentioned having, being a battery systems designer, that doesn't mean that he could go to another discipline within design and immediately be successful. Like there are certain techniques and principles that apply to, like if you're doing RF analog circuits, whatever, it's not going to be the same as if you're doing a traditional consumer device, right? Everything's going to have its own unique parts of the design.
There's a lot of disciplines, and for every discipline there's a group of knowledgeable people, and then there's a bunch of people that are trying to catch up. And circuit board design, to your point, is similar to that. Where just traditionally we have the librarian, you have the folks that did the layout. You might have the firmware person, the hardware engineer, the SI engineer. So you go down the list, right? And while that's being a little bit more concentrated now that more folks with engineering degrees are finding their way into the industry, a lot of those engineers don't do design, or what I call design, which is the layout part, exclusively. So if you're using a tool 2 or 3 times a year and you're not really doing these things daily, I mean, it's hard. Okay, it's hard, and I really feel that it's a sort of a use it or lose it type of proposition. So we have to understand that the designers today very well may be asked to do a bunch of those things I just rattled off as opposed to just layout. But by the same token, we also need to, one of the problems that the industry needs to solve is how is the software going to evolve to make it more intuitive and easier for that engineer who also does design as 1/10 or 1/5 of their job responsibility to do it as if they were doing it every day.
Yeah, because layout could be as impactful as schematic design. It's, you put the wrong thing in the wrong place, it might as well not work correctly.
Absolutely.
What's your opinion on, we had Zach Peterson on, and we're talking a little bit about AI PCB design. There's some softwares out there these days, and his main thing was we could use it for certain things, like maybe silk screen, is it overlapping a copper pad, some things like that, right? Like some things to it, right? But to do like a full-on PCB design, like almost in the way that we use ChatGPT today, right? Just type a prompt. How do you think that's doable?
Well, AI needs context to succeed, and AI design tools tend to be, and I'm talking about the layout tools, okay? Because there are tools that are, I think, very effective in terms of doing, BOM work, component search and procurement, that kind of thing.
Sure.
AI is great at being able to, have you ever seen like what the size of like the data sheet is for like a TI part? I mean, these things can run 600 pages. I mean, nobody can go through that, right? So AI actually
Renee definitely could. 100%.
Renee, who's on all of our posts and comments, he probably wrote it, honestly.
Sorry, I just pictured him popping up saying, "Actually, I have gone through 600 pages."
He should come over and we can watch an Illinois basketball game together, and I'll change him. So AI design tools though are physics based, right? They're not contextual, and constraints are complicated. So you're left with a situation where the AI has to be trained on specific customer requirements, the supplier variations, the quality challenges, and all of those things are always changing, often without the designer's knowledge. And maybe worse, the C-suite isn't involved in the technology implementation in a lot of companies. I'm not talking about K&F here. But you have this two-tiered workforce where the adopters fear for their jobs, and yet the C-suite is saying, hey, look, you need to do this. So you've got this tension. I look at AI as being intelligent automation. And I also look at auto routers, which have been around since the 1970s, as being intelligent automation. And take a guess as to what the auto router use is among North American board designers.
99.99.
Use it or don't use it?
Use it.
No, it's about 5% use them.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 5%. And the reason
not even as a starting point.
The auto router will typically get you to a certain point, okay, and it always comes down to the constraints that you put in, and you can under constrain or you can over constrain. But if you don't get it right in the sweet spot, then you're going to end up with a mess. And even when you do have it correctly constrained, you might get 80% there, in which case now you still need to finish all these nets, and you have to figure out where everything is in addition to that. And sometimes it's just easier to do it from scratch because you know where everything is, as opposed to going backwards. You may have thousands and thousands. I mean, one BGA can have over 2,000 nets, right? So, it's just, it doesn't work out in practice that the way you want it to. Now, I'm not saying that every designer gets away with that. Some do use the auto router very, very well. But for the most part, we have found, survey after survey, class after class, that the number of folks who are using the auto router is minimal at best. And that's
do you think they just want their boss to think they're working a lot harder than they are, and they don't answer the survey honestly? Or
no? So I love that because that does come up, right? Is, hey, look, you know what? If I am not occupied all the time with this particular design, or doing layout or whatever, they're going to think that I'm underutilized and put me on something that I don't want to do, or they may not think that they need me. But most designs get respun and respun and respun. So, there's always more work to be had. And I would argue that the faster you can get things to prototype and then to launch, the more opportunity you have for the next generation product. And isn't time to market really what we're all after? So I'm not sure I buy into that thinking. If that's what people are thinking, I'm not sure that that's the way they should think.
Yeah, Daniel.
I'm not saying they don't think that way. I'm saying I would take a different tact if I was in their shoes.
Mike, I got a question, because I always, before I got to know who you are as a person and where your passion lies, like I always just looked at you as kind of, don't take offense to this, but like just the trade show guy, right? Like you're just there, like you, Francis, Pete Waddell, right? Like you guys were just there.
I've just always thought he was really cool. That's weird.
Okay. Well, you met him later. You met her in later life.
Go ahead.
What did you do? Because you have so much knowledge about PCB design and fab. Where did you learn all of it from? Because it couldn't be just by reading magazines. The stuff you talk about is like real life practical experience. So
I listen and listen and listen, and I talk to anybody I can. I sat through hours and hours and hours of tutorials on design, fabrication, assembly when I was at IPC. And, then you go out afterwards, you sit at lunch with all those guys, you go out afterwards, you have dinner with them. I mean, you live it, right? And so, you know, I'm not an engineer. I don't pretend to be one. I had a very brief undergrad as a epidemiologist. You know, that was before epidemiology became sort of a charged word. And after a couple semesters, University of Illinois and I realized that if I stayed in epidemiology, we were going to have a little disagreement about my grades. So I switched to to something that seemed a lot easier, which was journalism.
Stencil manufacturing.
Well, you know, but the thing is, like right out of right out of college, I went to work for a trade publication that was covering the industry, and I was 22 years old, and I had a couple different job offers, and one was I was living in Chicago. One offer was in Chicago for more money, and the other offer was 80 miles round trip outside of Chicago and for less money. And so naturally I took the one for less money and the big commute. But I learned a lot about, the industry, and I learned a lot about communication, and honestly, I didn't do it, just because whenever I would meet a girl and they would inevitably ask what I did for a living, it wasn't so I could say, well, I'm into surface mounting, right? I mean, that wasn't
through insertion.
But I've visited over 100 EMS shops around the world. I've been through probably 60 or 70 board shops, again, all around the world, and you live it, right? I mean, if you get in or you get out, you can't be halfway into this industry.
Yeah.
That's so true.
You said, I mean, talking about that, you mentioned you started in 91, I think it was. So
Sure.
That's 35 years, right? So having seen so many different ups and downs in the industry during that time, like where would you say we're trending right now as an industry? Are we going in a good direction, bad? Like where are we at in your opinion?
I think we're going in a great direction, and I'll tell you why. The barriers to entry for new products has never been lower. Somebody can come up with an idea and they can get that into manufacturing really, really quickly. I remember a presentation I went to when I was at IPC back in the mid-90s. It was by this guy named Neil Gershon, who was at MIT at the time. I think he's still there. And
we call him Gersh.
Yeah, Gersh. Yeah, the other Gersh. So Gersh showed this. He ran this lab where students would just, take ideas and create things. And this one student had this created, like, it looked like a bladder, okay, like like a big hot water bottle thing that had a resistive circuit in it, and you could it had an aperture, and you could scream into the aperture, and no sound would come out. It would capture that sound, and then she would go and she would burp it.
What?
And you hear this, and
no way.
She called it the Scream Meister. And the whole idea was that, like, like when you're really ticked off and you couldn't do anything at the moment or whatever, you could just capture your scream and then release it later in a more appropriate place. But the idea here was that, anybody could conceive of anything and then develop it in almost real time. And Gersh's concept was that we're going to get to the point where every product costs $1. It would just be the lowest common denominator. And everything could be conceived and built on your desktop, basically 3D printer type of thing. And we're getting closer and closer to that. There are more consumer startups today than ever. So many companies we've never heard of. I mean, and they've got so much money. I mean, they're getting funded left and right. You have the whole drone industry, right? I mean, that really didn't exist except as a kid's toy 10 years ago. And now you've got billion-dollar companies with or private companies that have multi $100, $250 million in venture capital funding. Their valuations are well over $1 billion. And
I think that company Neros is aiming to build 1 million drones a year at some point. Like, I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, all with U.S. parts.
Yeah.
Our skies are going to look so different in 5 years. I just imagine it's just going to sound like giant mosquitoes are all around us constantly.
Could be. With everything getting dropped off. I mean, look at the robo-taxi. I mean, it won't be just product. It might be people. or the air taxi, I guess is what it's called. But I'm saying that like it's a really exciting time to be in electronics. I mean, you know, we're in this depending on how you count it, the second or third largest industry in the country, and we get to see it all. You know,
Certainly the coolest. That's what all the ladies say.
Well, I mean, you know, so the other two are finance and healthcare, right? I mean, do you really want to be part of healthcare right now?
Yeah.
No.
So and I say that with my wife, who's back here somewhere, you know, as a doctor. So maybe I shouldn't say that too loudly. But, you know, so and those are just a couple examples, right? So, you know, wearables, you know, everywhere. And there's so many things. I mean, I must have, you know, like every one of these, you know, these AirPod things, and except that they're the cheapo AirPods. And, you know, you go on to Amazon and you look at how many different companies are selling some type of AirPod-ish device, and there are thousands. You look at the number of folks who are, you're actually starting to see this on, not as much on the manufacturing side yet, but certainly on the design side, right? Where the employment has gone up, the number of folks employed on the ECAD side has gone up 59% in 15 years. It's staggering. And they've only had 3 down quarters, 3 down year-over-year quarters in the last, it's almost 10 years now. I mean, so wow. It's really a growth area. And software tends to be a trailing indicator. You know, people buy the tools, you know, because they see the demand coming. So, you know, there's just a lot out there. Tesla, you know, I mean, electric vehicles, right? Those things didn't exist for the most part, right? I mean, they existed 115 years ago, but, you know, at scale, they didn't exist until, you know, Tesla really ramped everything 15 years ago, and not even. And now there's how many? There's over 100 electric vehicle makers in China alone.
The boards on a Tesla are insane too,
right?
Like mounted right to the, like you think about the type of environment those type of circuit boards are going in. I mean, that's
you want to talk about harsh environment? Yeah, it doesn't get any harsher than that. It's so true though. I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, we'd go on a road trip and we'd count bugs, right? VW bugs, and you try to count how many. And you know, it kind of came full circle. Recently, we were on a little bit of a road trip, and my son was counting Cybertrucks, and there was probably more of them than there were bugs when I was a kid. And it's like, it's true, you know, it was not even a slice of the market. The first one that I can remember was the EV1 from GM, and I remember seeing 1 or 2 of those. But now they're just everywhere. There's electric vehicles everywhere.
I remember when my first son was born, and I did what, you know, any guy in this industry would do. You know, I sat in the delivery room and I started counting the number of circuit boards and all the equipment in the room. And, you know, if I did that today, I'm sure it would have tripled.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, if we want to be respectful of your time, and thank you very much for coming on and joining us. It's been a long time coming. I remember last year at Apex, I was standing in line. No, I was going up an escalator after having registered, and I saw you and Chris Shea in line together. And she was actually late for the first interview at that. But we've been trying to get you on the podcast basically ever since. So it's finally schedules aligned, and we got you here, and really just appreciate it.
I'm thrilled to do it. I would do it anytime you wanted me on. I will. I remember that, you know, Chris was the one who actually put together the assembly program for PCB East. And so, I mean, I don't think you can get a bigger rock star than her for, you know, figuring out what it is that folks want to hear about and what they need to hear about, and kind of putting it all together, finding the right people to speak. And we really think she's put together a terrific program, you know, not just for, you know, assembly, right? We have classes on the basics of assembly. We have ones on advanced topics, but we also have what I would call sort of the bringing it back track, which is things that executives and HR folks need to understand, you know, about if they're planning on migrating assembly back to the U.S. and they want to reopen factories. You know, we do think that there will be not just more EMS work, but I think more OEMs are going to start bringing a certain amount in-house, and they need to relearn all these things. So we've got talks on how to scale up on the equipment side. We have talks on workforce development. We're bringing in people from NextGen, which is that public-private consortium developed by NextFlex, that's their whole training arm, and they reach out to high schools and colleges. We're bringing in folks from different academic centers, community colleges, Northeastern, which has a big co-op program here in New England, to talk about what workforce development looks like. And I think it's really important that people show up to this, because I think that the academic side needs to hear from industry as to what their specific needs are. I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And so it's an opportunity for folks to turn out and express politely, hopefully, what it is that they need on the ground and what they would financially support.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm excited to be there. And like you mentioned, Chris did a great job kind of getting things together, and highly encouraged the three of us to attend and take part of it. So we'll be excited
and the ones
to be
who
there.
care will be there.
Yes. And this will probably air sometime around Father's Day. So Sean, you showed your logo early on. Can you just cap this off for Rick and go ahead and give out your fax number for anybody who may be interested in PCB assembly?
I think we disconnected it, but I'll try. 586-294-5999.
Yeah, so fax in your RFQs and
act now. But wait, there's more.
That's kind of just a running joke we have.
I'm pretty sure it's disconnected though, because I remember one time I was reviewing the phone bill. I'm like, why am I paying this? This is crazy. And we had a toll-free number too, and I'm like, no, it's long distance is not a thing anymore, Dad. We don't need this. It's just kind of like,
it's a running joke we have, both of us being multi-generations in the business, and the way things were when our dads were kind of coming up through the industry. It's you don't go anywhere unless you got your business cards, and you got to get out your website and all that. But so we just kind of poke fun at it. But
yeah,
thank you so much, Mike, for your time. It was awesome. Let people know how they can kind of get involved in PCB East and the PCEA in general. Maybe plug your social channels and how they can get registered for that.
Right. So, PCB East takes place at the end of April. That's PCBEast.com is the website. The best thing is just to go to PCEA.net. That's sort of the umbrella. You'll find everything there. If folks wanted to reach out to me directly, they can just ping me at mike@PCEA.net. There's no barriers to entry here. I'm easy.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. This was awesome. Thank you to our audience for either listening or watching. If you haven't already done so, please follow us. It helps get distribution. Give a like if you like what you hear. And if you're not already following us on LinkedIn, follow us there as well. Sean does some really great videos. Daniel always has some insightful posts, and every once in a while I'll even throw something up there. So on behalf of myself, Sean, and Daniel, thank you for being here, Mike, and thank you all for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.